In fall 2016, I moved into half of a really old house. It was built in the 1880s, close to the original campus of Indiana University. The area around the old campus had turned into a park, but it was filled with homeless people and drug addicts. The owners of the house turned it into a strange duplex. My friend had lived there before me, and he claimed it was haunted. But I didn't believe him. He was a bit of an odd guy. The layout of the house was strange. When you walked in the door, you were in a living room-like space. Then, if you kept walking, there was a doorway to a bedroom. Past that was the kitchen. There were no doors except for the one to the bathroom and the one that led to the shared basement. My first night there was uneventful. I felt a little uncomfortable because I hadn't lived by myself in a long time. I was feeling lonely and on edge. I stayed up late and eventually fell asleep. But I woke up again around 3 in the morning. It's a cliche, I know. What woke me up was the sound of drumming. It sounded like a group of drummers were drumming on every flat surface of the living room. It went on for a while, and I was completely terrified. It was just a cacophony. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I finally gathered up the courage to get up and check on it. As soon as I passed the threshold to the living room, it just stopped. Nothing happened for the rest of the night, but I didn't get much sleep. A couple of days later, a friend was visiting. He was about to leave. We were standing by the front door next to my bookshelf. I told him about how I was having trouble sleeping and the story from the first night. As I was saying this, a book threw itself off the bookshelf and onto the floor 3 feet away. It had to fly past the dresser the shelf was perched on and landed between the two of us. He just gave me a creeped out look and said he had to go. I don't blame him. Eventually, I asked the guy in the other half of the duplex what was up. He had lived there for 8 years. He told me that no one stayed longer than a year, and they all reported the same stuff. For whatever reason, he said nothing ever happened on his side. It didn't make sense, but there it was. I tried to brush it off as my imagination played tricks on me. But the strange occurrences didn't stop. Every night, I would hear strange noises. Sometimes it sounded like whispers coming from the walls. Other times, it was the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth in the hallway outside my bedroom. I started to feel like I was being watched all the time. Whenever I was alone in the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was lurking in the shadows just out of sight. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a loud banging coming from the basement. It sounded like someone was pounding on the walls with a sledgehammer. I hesitated for a moment, then gathered up my courage and went to investigate. As I descended the creaky stairs to the basement, the banging grew louder and more frantic. My heart was pounding in my chest as I reached the bottom step and stepped into the dimly lit room. But to my surprise, there was nothing there. The room was empty, except for some old boxes and furniture covered in dusty sheets. The banging had stopped as suddenly as it had started. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that house. It was like there was a dark presence lurking in every corner, just waiting to strike. I tried to ignore it and go about my daily routine, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the feeling of dread that hung over me like a dark cloud. One evening, as I was cooking dinner in the kitchen, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the bedroom. I dropped what I was doing and ran to investigate, my heart racing with fear. But when I reached the bedroom, there was no one there. The room was empty, and the only sound was the pounding of my own heart in my ears. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. The strange occurrences were happening more and more frequently, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being tormented by something beyond my understanding. I knew I had to get out of that house, but I couldn't afford to move. I felt trapped, like a prisoner in my own home. Then one night, things took a turn for the worse. I was awoken from a fitful sleep by the sound of whispering coming from the walls. It was like 100 voices speaking at once, their words unintelligible but filled with malice and hatred. I felt a chill run down my spine as I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. And then suddenly, the whispering stopped, and I heard a low, guttural growling coming from the foot of my bed. I turned on the bedside lamp, expecting to see some kind of wild animal lurking in the darkness. But what I saw was far worse. Standing at the foot of my bed was a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Its mouth was twisted into a cruel grin, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to escape the terror that gripped me. But I was frozen in place, unable to move or even breathe. And then, with a sudden burst of speed, the figure lunged towards me, its clawed hands reaching out to grab me. I closed my eyes and braced myself for the end, but nothing happened. When I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone, and I was alone in the darkness once more. I knew then that I had to leave that house, no matter the cost. I packed my bags and fled into the night, leaving behind the nightmares that haunted me in that cursed place. To this day, I still don't know what lurked in the shadows of that old house, and I pray that I never find out. But one thing is for certain. I will never forget the horrors that I witnessed there, and I will never set foot in that house again. Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks. When I was a solo driver, I was making a delivery in Memphis, TN. It was a hot summer evening, and the sun was setting over the city, casting a golden glow over the streets. I had been driving for hours, and my GPS led me to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a sense of unease settling in. The building seemed abandoned, and the only sound was the creaking of old wooden crates in the wind. I grabbed my clipboard and stepped out of the truck, feeling the warm air envelop me. The receiver, a gruff-looking man with a thick beard, met me at the loading dock. He signed for the delivery, and I began to unload the cargo. But as the hours ticked by, he kept me waiting, claiming there was an issue with the paperwork. As the clock struck 7, my driving time was up. I needed to find a place to park for my mandatory 10-hour reset. The receiver suggested I head to the nearby TA Petro truck stop in West Memphis, just across the state line. I thanked him and climbed back into my rig, feeling frustrated and tired. The drive to the truck stop was uneventful, but as I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed it was eerily quiet. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the asphalt. I parked in the very back, where the darkness seemed to swallow my truck whole. My dog, Noodles, a scruffy little terrier, whined in the passenger seat, sensing my unease. I took Noodles out for a quick walk, and as we strolled through the deserted lot, I noticed a man standing behind a trailer, just staring into space. His presence sent a shiver down my spine, and I quickened my pace, hurrying Noodles back to the safety of the truck. After settling Noodles in, I grabbed my dinner bag and headed to the truck stop's restaurant. As I walked, the sound of footsteps echoed behind me. I turned to see the same man from the trailer following me at a distance. My heart raced, and I picked up my pace, weaving through the parked trucks. But no matter how many turns I took, he kept pace with me, always lurking just out of sight. I pushed open the door to the restaurant, grateful for the warm glow and bustling atmosphere inside. The place was packed, and I slid onto a stool at the bar, ordering a burger and fries. As I waited for my food, I glanced around, searching for the mysterious man, but he was nowhere to be seen. Halfway through my meal, nature called, and I excused myself to use the restroom. When I returned, my fork was on the right side of my plate. I'm left-handed, and I always place my utensils on the left. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had touched my food. I called the waitress over, still standing behind my chair, and asked if she had messed with my meal. She denied it, and I asked if she'd seen anyone else near my plate. She shook her head, too busy to notice anything. I requested the manager, and when he arrived, I told him about the strange man and my tampered food. But the manager's expression turned serious, and he offered to replace my meal and move me to a safer seat. As I waited for my new food to arrive, he disappeared into the office and returned with a stern look. "I reviewed the camera feed," he said, "and a man did indeed approach your plate while you were in the restroom. He added something to your mashed potatoes, stirred it, and left the building." My skin crawled. The manager offered to call the police, and I agreed, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. As I finished my new meal, the manager sat down across from me, his eyes scanning the restaurant. "I don't want you to leave alone," he said. "The police will escort you to your truck." Before long, 2 officers arrived, taking statements and searching the premises. They found no sign of the mysterious man, but promised to keep an eye on the truck stop. One of the officers offered to drive me back to my rig, and as we walked through the dark lot, I felt a sense of gratitude toward these kind strangers. As we reached my truck, the officer told me his partner would keep watch over the lot all night, ensuring my safety. I thanked them both, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The night had been long and terrifying, but thanks to the kindness of strangers, I made it through unscathed. As I settled in for the night, Noodles curled up beside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mysterious man was still out there, watching and waiting. But with the police keeping watch, I felt a sense of security, and eventually my eyelids grew heavy, and I drifted off,